Everything I'm going to press, you'll see it at the bottom left corner. Let's start with navigation. Navigation is pretty simple in Blender, mostly made with the mouse middle click. By scrolling it up and down, it will zoom in, zoom out. By pressing it and holding and moving around, we'll pan around the view. And by holding shift and holding middle mouse click, now we can move around. For selecting objects, we just left mouse click on them. I will select one of them and hold shift so I can select the second one. Press X. X, you can delete the objects, or you can just press del button, which will delete them instantly. Now let's select our cube, go into the modifier tab, choose modifier called subdivision surface, and I'll add maximum amount, which is 6. With this arrow, I will apply it. And now I want to see how many vertices this sphere has. What you have to do is go into Report Overlay. And here we have a statistic button. I'll press it. And now in this area, I can see how many vertices my object has. I want to make my object a bit bigger. What I'm going to do is press S, which is just means scaling up, and will move my mouse to make it bigger. S is for scaling, R is for rotating, and G is for moving. If you want to reset the position while it's still actively moving, you just press right mouse click and it resets the position. If you by accident applied it with your left mouse click anywhere in your area, what you can do is hold Alt and press G. What Alt does is resets the object mode position. So if you scale it and you want to resize it back, you can press Alt S and it will rescale the size. Now, I don't really want to have resizable object. So what I have to do is apply this scale. You can do that by pressing Ctrl and plus A and applying all transforms. Now this object is in this area. And if I press Alt S, it will not become smaller. Now when we have a sphere, we can start sculpt. To start sculpting, you have to move to the sculpting mode. You can find the modes up here. Let's choose the sculpting mode. Before sculpting, we'll be using symmetry. You can find symmetry in the tools. You can find most of the things in the tools. Here is the symmetry. But in the newer versions of Blender, you can find a lot of tools up here in this menu. So you can see like a butterfly action crossed in the middle. This shows that it's a symmetry. Mainly we're using X symmetry. So let's select that. Now we will see 2 dots on our sphere. If we don't have it, you will see only 1. This will help us navigate through the sphere. Next thing, I don't really like default look of the Blender's materials. So what I do is always use matte caps. You can change matte caps with this arrow and by pressing matte caps. Now, if you want to have all of these matte caps, which I have, you'll have to go into my Gumroad, which I will leave the link in the description, and download it. I'll try to use the most default one, which almost similar looking one comes with Blender, just a bit lighter. So the shadows are not that hard, same as specularity. Let's learn about the tools. What I'm going to do is go here till I see this icon. I'll press down and drag out my tools. This way you will see how they're called. Before I can sculpt, there's always shortcuts are very useful. Mostly used shortcuts will be for the grab, crease, smooth. Other shortcuts are not that important. And the tools which don't have shortcuts, it will quickly make the shortcuts for them. So if you press Q, you probably might not see anything, but if for quick favorites, you can put in the quick favorite tools by pressing on them with the right click. And the first choice by adding a quick favorites. Now the inflate brush will go into my quick favorites. I won't be using it. So if you change your mind and you want to get rid of them, you just go back to the tool, right click again, and now you can remove it. For my ones, I have draw sharp and clay strips. Draw sharp is here and clay strips is here. Are the main tools which I use to sculpt my meshes. Next thing very important for you to know is if you have a tool, it will have its strength, radius. Let's talk about radius. So you can change radius with a quick shortcut of F and moving your mouse from left to right. Right will increase it, left will decrease it. By clicking on a canvas, you will apply a choice. When you are happy with your size, you'll probably have to change strength. I am using tablet, graphic drawing tablet. Oh, my strength will not be 0.6. I will show you what are basically most used areas of my brush. And if you can see it's close to the middle, that means I'm using only half of the strength. And I always recommend using lower strengths because it becomes way easier to control the brush. So if you're using the mouse, I recommend you going to 0.3, 0.4, or 0.2. I'm using the tablet one, so I will use the default ones. Now, let's select the grab brush and make our brush size much bigger. We'll need to go through the views, and the views can be changed with numpad. If you have a numpad, you can use it. So 1 is the front view, 3 is the side view, and 7 is the top view. By any chance you have a top view and you want to see the bottom view, what you have to do is press 9. So 9 changes the view of completely opposite. Let's say we are on the right side of the side view. I want to see left side, you press 9. It will switch to the left. You can also change views with this sphere-like bubble. And by pressing on these icons, the views will be changed. I'm usually using numpad 1 just because it feels more intuitive. References are extremely important for sculpting, even if you will not be sculpting the same type of face or thing. I will still share the references for the sculpt that I'm trying to achieve. It might be looking a bit different, and it probably will look much different for you. But don't worry, we're learning the basis of the face and how to structure it. I always start with the grab brush tool, and what I do is go into the front view and drag from the middle part of the bottom down. Now a bit on the sides to lower it down. Now I will go into the side view with shortcut numpad 3, position my camera, and draw the face a bit outwards to make a head a bit bigger, because we need to have brains for our character. I like to go at the completely bottom and draw a bit of the chin, just for a position. It doesn't have to be anything complete yet. Another thing for sculpting faces very important is view. So what I'll do is press and shortcut to get the side menu. And in the view options, I'll change focal length of our camera. I usually like to use from 75 to 105. I usually go somewhere in the middle by 85 or 9. It's not going to be too much different between these two numbers, but it's definitely going to be a huge difference between 50, which is the standard. It will become very hard for us to shape a good looking nose. And somewhere at the 90, it will be more natural. Press N again to hide the menu. If you don't want to use the shortcut, you can use the small arrow in here. But I usually don't like this. Okay. Now, when we have this nice head shape, I always tell that head shape is extremely important, which you should take care of the most if you're a beginner, because a good basis for things are an amazing track to successful head sculpt. I'll go a bit into the top view and shape my skull a bit on the back. I'll make it a bit longer and a bit bigger on the side. I'll definitely use my annotation. Let's use some better color. Now, when you're shaping the skull from your top view, always have this line where it's a bit thicker in here and a bit smaller and narrower at the front of the face. Okay. Same goes for the front view. Oh, nothing too complicated yet. I'll choose the clay strip brush, which is at the top. If you're not using a quick favorite, you can select from there. And with the medium size radius brush, I'll start forming a jaw. This is only gonna be a line which is gonna help us sculpt. Nothing special yet too. And if you look for reference and tried learning about face sculpting before, you'll see that many people uses face planes. So what we're gonna do is somewhat try to make a face planes for us, which is going to make easier to make a face shape. What I'm gonna do is choose the scrap brush tool. And with this type of radius, I'm gonna slowly carve in the face to the side. You can do same a bit at the bottom. Don't go too heavy on it. And I will smooth. Now, smoothing tool works with every single brush, but you just have to press and hold Shift key. And when you're going to draw on the object, now it's gonna smooth. Now, keep in mind if some tools don't really work with Shift, and which one doesn't work is everything below yellow tools. So all of these below yellow tool, if you will have it selected, it's not gonna smooth out. You can do a quick test by choosing clay strips, drawing this. You don't have to copy this. I'll select the mask brush tool and hold Shift. So you can see nothing happens. Same goes for every other tool. And if I go even to the first yellow tool, you can see that the Shift brush works now. What I'm gonna do is go into the side view, and I want my jaw starting from somewhere here and going down. Not that much inner line, which is right now at this point. Let's fix this problem quickly with the grab brush tool and side view. Now, keep in mind that if you're in the side view, your object will not move on other planes, only on this plane where your view is at. So what I usually do is go into the side view and rotate view a bit and start moving my jaw then. For now it looks big, but that's okay. Let's just go in the front view and make it smaller. Can draw a chin out a bit down and forming our face as our reference. It doesn't have to be perfect yet because without all the landmarks, it's kind of hard to get the face right. I'll always recommend getting the neck because with the neck, everything becomes a bit easier to follow. So we'll be using a masking tool. You can select it from here or just press M, which is short for mask. The masking tool, I will draw the mesh something like this. And now use a shortcut for masking tools. Masking tools are hidden for the shortcut A. And we have this pie menu. I'll choose the invert option. And now scroll a bit down. By the way, if you don't need these names, you can make it smaller. And somewhere in the middle, you'll see most of the tools. But for this tutorial purpose, I'm using this big one. We'll be using Move Brush. And go into the side view. If you don't like where your arrows are, you can change their position with this sculpting option. It's a pivot and pivot to unmasked. I usually use unmasked, and you can see I have set up the shortcut with that V key. You can make the shortcut by right clicking and adding change shortcut. You can also add to quick favorites, but I usually don't like to mix up these tools. When we have it this one, you can just draw from use not arrows. Arrows are fine too, but if you want to move on both of two axes, you can just use this plane looking like thingy. In this case, I'll use arrows because it will be easier to explain. So I will move it down, and the next need to be moved a bit right. Not too drastically, and I will leave it somewhere here. We can clear the mask by pressing A again and selecting clear mask. I'll use the shift, and of course it's not working because I'm using the move tool. I'll just go to place strips quickly and start smoothing my mesh. We're having a pretty nice looking base for our face. What I'm going to do is go into the front view and try thinking where our eyes can be. So if your face is something like this, eyes would go somewhere almost in the middle. That's where I start. Eyebrows can be a bit higher than the middle. That just keep in mind. Of course, we're using a sculpting tool, which is digital, which means we can always change the position of where the things are, and we probably will be changing the position where we are, but this is where the basis comes from. I like to make quite big eye gaps with the clay strips. Some people like to use draw brush, which is the top one, or X is the shortcut for it. But with the draw tool, I usually find that it makes it too deep. Now, if you watching that tutorial and you don't understand how I'm carving it without drawing it on the top, what I do is just hold Ctrl key and it switches the position of the tool. It works with every single tool. Now, let's say we'll be using draw sharp this first time. If you use it normally, it will carve in, but if you hold Ctrl, it will go outwards. Okay, so we have this setup. I like to go into the side view and fix the skull a bit. What I do is go into here where the eyes are and drag a bit in and fix all the skull. As you can see with the neck and the eyes, everything becomes way more apparent on how our head is. What I'm keeping in mind is how long this is. So usually this area of the skull back is equal to your nose. Now I'm just keeping it roughly positioned. We'll probably change it a bit later. I'm gonna go into the front view, use clay strips again, and start forming a bit of the nose. Don't worry too much about the shape. I can see that it's becoming very, very hard to add details because the mesh itself is not looking smooth. Before doing anything further, I always recommend to save the project just in case project crashes. So how you can save it is go into the file menu and save or save as, or I usually use shortcut because we always have to keep resaving the project while working on it. The shortcut is simple Control and S. Now go into the where you want your project to be saved and name it how you want it. In this case, I will save as Justice Tutorial and save my Blender file. When a file is saved, we can go further now. If you're not complete beginner to Blender or sculpting, you can choose from two things. It's voxel remesher on the top. If you're new, you can keep following me. I'll be using voxel remesher. But if you will really not like it, then you can go check some other videos and learn more about Top. Shortcut for changing voxel resolution is Shift R. And moving your mouse right to left. Now be very careful with this. I will cancel operation with the right click for now. And you can see all of these numbers are here in the remeasure tab. You can see voxel size, that's what the resolution is. And then remeshing itself is the button here. I'm not gonna click it anything yet. Now, be very careful with these options because going it very quickly to the right side will definitely crash your computer. So this is not very safe if you're not being careful. So what I ask everyone to do is going a little bit and then apply it, and then go again with the resolution and apply it. Because if you do it this way, your movement will become less changing the number. So let's say I go into this and now I move, you see the number only changes a bit. This way it's much safer. What I'm gonna do is go to like 0.4 and up. First, I'm gonna save the file again and now apply it. Applying the voxel remeasure, the shortcut is Ctrl+R. Now I got 163,000 of vertices, and the voxel size depends from your mesh size and how complex it is. So you might get a very different result of vertices and the look on your mesh. So I always recommend keeping check of this number and what number I'm having here. So let's say you have a number a bit higher than this, then I would just go back a bit with the number and try applying and seeing the number and trying to follow this number itself and not the voxel. Okay, when you have a bit more, you can keep continuing. I'll choose clay strip brush and clean up on the sides. This is again very important to clean this way because for the face planes, and around here should be enough. Maybe just a bit from the nose. I'll go into the side view with the number 3. Use grab brush tool with the shortcut G and make my nose shape. Now, noses generally can be extremely many different shapes, so I wouldn't say that you should do exactly like me. But if you're trying to following the references, as I do, then you definitely should try to keep the shape as it is in reference. I decided my nose shape will be something like this. Now this doesn't have to be the end goal, but the rough shape. If you're feeling more comfortable with the drawing, you can draw the shape and then use the grab brush tool to fill in the shape. I'll smooth a bit, not strongly. Again, if you're using the mouse, you're probably going to get rid of very many details. So let's go back. I'm gonna go back a bit, but if you smoothed out, don't go back. This is just for showing case. Now I'm gonna smooth with my mouse. See how roughly it deletes all the shapes? And especially if you have lower vertex count, it will completely wipe up all the details you have. So what I would recommend you do is go into smoothing brush and lowering the strength to somewhere around here. Now when you're using the mouse, you see that it's much less intense. And if you want some of the places be more intensely smooth, what you have to do is just rub that place a bit more often, and then it should go a bit smoother, and you can repeat the action as many times as you like. I'll smooth very gently. And we have something like this. I think this is pretty good base. And we can move with some of the other shapes now. I actually like to get the neck looking good at the beginning, but we'll still be able to change the shape anytime we want. So what I want to do is get a bit of the nice curves. I always say that the face, especially of the female, is all about the nice curves. So we'll try to get something like this. Sorry for my inaccurate drawing. Oh, what I'm gonna do is just drag a bit here, make a bit dent in there. The front is not really that detailed or that shaped, so for now it's perfectly fine. Okay, I think at this point the eyebrows will help a lot for shaping up the eyes in the scope. So what I'm going to do is go back into object mode, and with the Shift A, I'm gonna add the object, which is going to be V-sphere this time. Now you probably can see that the V-sphere is in the middle of the mesh. What I'm gonna do is not do anything yet and press Tab, and that will make me go into edit mode of that sphere. I'm not sure if the sphere is selected. It probably is, but what I can do is hide the head with this icon, and I can see, yes, the eye is selected. So what I'm going to do is press G to move it. And now I kind of want to move my object on the axis. And you can choose which one axis you want by just pressing the axis letter. So let's say I want to move it on X axis, which is the red one. I'm gonna just press X and it's gonna move on X axis. I'm gonna move it a bit to the side and hide my head. And I want to rotate it now on the X axis. So what did you do for rotation? Press X, R, and then press X to rotate it only on X axis. And I will write 90 degrees. The eye will be facing now in front of us. I'll try to move it here. Now I want it to go in front. So what I do, this is Y-axis, so G, Y-axis, and move it a bit in front. It's definitely too big at this point, so I'll press S to scale it down. And just with the G, try to position it somewhere around here. Eyes are usually covered by your skull. What I'm gonna do is use, again, the annotation to show you. So this is your eyeball. The eye usually covers a big part of the top and a bit less of the bottom. So this is why the iris itself is much more visible and not so much at the bottom. Now our eyes are probably a bit bigger and we will get a bit more complex when we're going to be sculpting it. Okay, I'm gonna unhide the object and I want to have another eye on the other side. So what I'm going to do is go into modifiers and add a mirror modifier. Now we'll have it 2 eyes. I always like to check how on the side view how far they are from the nose bridge, and I think generally I don't like too big of the gap. This should be fine. You can still move it a bit later. You know, 3D, it's not a real-time scope, so we don't have to worry as much from how we put everything. But getting a rough, nice placement is definitely very important.